Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Webinar Wednesday. Uh, I'm quite excited about today's topic because the fourth industrial revolution is one of my favorite topics. And I think it's one of the concepts that's least understood, not just in South Africa, but globally. I mean, last week there was a nasty incident in Parliament where somebody asked the Deputy President, Mr. David Mabuza, what's the fourth industrial revolution and what were the first, second, and third industrial revolutions, and he couldn't answer that. Okay. So I decided today to speak about the fourth industrial revolution and what it means to you particularly, and what it means to the youth in general, what it means for our careers, what it means for our businesses, but more importantly and particularly what it means for people that are doing software development. So let's get started without delay. And as usual, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Please don't hesitate, ask them in the chat, and we'll pick it up from there. Awesome. So let's get started. Now, when we start with the fourth industrial revolution, let's first look at let's first look at a few facts to show you exactly what, to demonstrate to you exactly what is the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. So fact number one, top 10 in-demand jobs this year didn't exist 10 years ago. That means if you go to a job site and you look for what are the top jobs, you'll see that there's completely new jobs in existence now. People are doing new kinds of work that there wasn't even a job description for it a few years ago. Now take a look at some of the job descriptions on the screen. Use my phone. Oh, you can't use my phone. Use the 081 phone. Tell Masira I'll give you a time on the thing and use it. Okay, so if you look at these job descriptions, these didn't exist a few years ago. Now let's look at the second fact. The second fact, half of today's jobs are going to become obsolete in the next 10 years. That means that some of the jobs that people are doing today, the kind of jobs that people are involved in, are going to go obsolete. Now, one more fact. We're going to see more technological advancement in the next 10 years than we saw in the previous 100 years. Now, think about it. In a decade, we're going to see more technological advancement than we saw in an entire century. How will this even be possible? Now, this is possible, and scientists tell us there's a very logical reason for it. And that logical reason is this. In the next decade, we're going to have help. Whereas in the previous 100 years, we did all the technological advancements by ourselves. Now, this is a phenomenon which I like to call a rise of the machines. It's a time when machines are becoming more and more intelligent, exponentially more intelligent, and they're starting to do things that previously wasn't possible for machines to do. You might know this by its more popular name of Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. Now, what exactly is the fourth industrial revolution? Before we get into that, let's look at what were the first, second, and third industrial revolutions so that it gives you context as to what is the fourth industrial revolution. I think it's important as IT professionals that you know this. And it's also something great to talk to people about. I mean, friends, colleagues, associates, tell them what it is. Sit around the table, tell them what it is. It'll make you look smart, but it will also inform them exactly what it is. So let's start with the first industrial revolution. Round about the 1760s, now we're talking about 250 years somewhat ago, the steam engine was invented. And that steam engine kicked off what is known as the first industrial revolution. Now, previous to that, everything that was manufactured by hand. So whether it was things made out of steel or things made out of wood, everything was made by craftsmen who spent years and years and years learning their trade and they started making these things and started earning money through manufacturing these things. Bring in the steam engine, and suddenly we've got machines that started manufacturing, and not just machines for manufacture, but we got steam engines also, which went into trains and went into ships. Now, what effect that had was not only could we make more goods in our factories, but we could send those goods further out. Using the ships and the trains, we could send them to all parts of the world. And what that did over the next couple of 100 years was that it made the world into a smaller place by making more and more places accessible to more and more people. Around about the early 1900s, what happened was there was a much bigger demand for goods in many different parts of the world. So what people decided was there needs to be new manufacturing methods, new ways of making things. Now let me give you an example. Prior to the second industrial revolution, it took about 2 to 3 weeks to make a car, a single car. After the second industrial revolution, it took about 1.5 hours to make a complete car. What caused that change? It was mass production and assembly lines. Now, when they brought assembly lines into factories, it transformed factories. Now, what exactly is an assembly line? Now, think about an assembly line as a conveyor belt from one side of the factory to the other. And at every point in the assembly line, in that conveyor belt, there's one person who's specialized to do just one job. So, if you're manufacturing a car in an assembly line, the first person will put the chassis onto the conveyor belt, and then the chassis will move forward. The second person will put the wheels, and that's all he'll do the whole day, just put on the wheels. Person number 3 will put on the steering. Person number 4 will put in the engine. I'm not saying that's exactly how it works, but you're getting the idea. So every day, each person will do his own specialized task, and then the car will move on to the next and the next and the next person, so that everybody has the job and there's a constant flow. The assembly line is like a stream of water flowing. It must never stop. It must continue moving, and it must be so efficient that there mustn't be a bottleneck in that assembly line. There mustn't be one person or one group of people that's holding up everybody else. Everything must be constantly moving. So then the raw material goes in and a finished product comes out. A set of parts goes in and a complete motor vehicle comes out on the other side. Now, couple that with the rise of electricity. We know that electricity came around about the late 1800s, but it only went mainstream around about 1910, 1920, to a point where factories started to adopt it, and it became adopted in factories, in cities, in towns, and it became widespread. So couple those two, and we've got the second industrial revolution, which in a way was almost like a continuation of the first industrial revolution. Fast forward to the 1970s, and then we got the age of computers, or the digital age kicking in, or the age of automation. Now, around about the 1970s, computers became small and cheap enough so that homes and businesses could afford them. And computers started becoming mainstream and started taking over more and more work that people used to do. And that kicked off the third industrial revolution. And from that time to now, up till today, the third industrial revolution is still continuing. So in the early days, the third industrial revolution took the form of little computers which you connected to the back of your TV. And then it went in the early 1990s to the internet. And then in the early 2000s, we saw the rise of cell phones. In the late 2010s, we saw the rise of smartphones. And then we saw social media coming in, e-commerce, and everything that we know today that the internet is. That is still the third industrial revolution. Now, fast forward to about 5 or 6 years ago, and we see something completely new coming about. And what is that? Computers started leaving their traditional domain. Where's the traditional domain of computers? Where were they confined to before the fourth industrial revolution. They were on desks. So a computer was a machine that sat on a desk, or it was a cell phone, or it was a tablet PC. Simple enough. But now, around 5 or 6 years ago, computers started coming into the real world and started doing real world things that only humans could do before. For example, driving cars. Previously, it was not even imaginable that computers could drive cars. What enabled this? Three things: cyber-physical systems, networks, and artificial intelligence. Now, what are these three things? Cyber-physical systems are things that were previously never connected to the internet, but now are being connected to the internet, like self-driving cars, for example. Or if you own an Apple Watch or any smart watch, it's a device, a wearable device that's now connected to the internet. Previously, there was no such thing as a watch connected to the internet. Then we got networks. The internet is a network. Self-driving cars form their own little network which connects in turn to the internet. And finally, artificial intelligence is when we take our human abilities and we put them into computers. We spoke about artificial intelligence in a previous webinar, so I'm not going to get into that. Now, these three things combined kicked off this fourth industrial revolution, which brought about so many different things, so many different technologies. I mean, if you've ever used an Uber, it's the fourth industrial revolution right there, because the Uber car is a cyber physical system. It is a car that's connected to the internet, which uses artificial intelligence to track where you are and divert the closest car to you. So if you are in Durban and you're looking for a car, or if you're in the Durban beachfront and you're looking for an Uber, Uber is not going to notify a car in Johannesburg that you need a pickup. It's going to find the closest car to you. How do they do that? Using artificial intelligence. So wherever you see a scenario where things are connected to the internet, cyber physical systems, physical gadgets, whether it's wearables, whether it's clothing or vehicles or machinery, or even something like, and get this, when you go to malls nowadays, do you notice airports and malls in their parking lots, they have above where the cars park, they have these green lights, and when you park under it, it turns red. Now that is a cyber physical system. What that thing is doing is that there's not just a light there, but there's also a sensor which is connected to the internet. Now what that does is it's able to tell the owners of the mall exactly how many parkings are being used and which parkings are being used. In the future, in the near future, what's going to happen is that they're going to make that available to us via our cell phones. So when you enter a parking lot, you'll be able to see on your cell phone where's the next available parking. So you don't have to drive up and down the parking lot looking for the parking. Taking it a few years into the future beyond that, self-driving cars, as a self-driving car is driving towards a mall, it will contact the mall's computers and say, I'm about to come, I'm looking for a parking, show me where's your parkings. So the mall will say, third level, parking number 55, it's kept for you. And so the self-driving car will go and park in there. You see what I'm saying? Cyber physical systems, things that were never connected to the internet are now being connected to the internet. Let me give you another example of a cyber physical system. In the near future, we're going to have cinema seats that are connected to the internet. Seats that have sensors so that if somebody is sitting on it, that seat will show up as being occupied. And if the person gets up, that seat will be shown as unoccupied. Why will they use this? They will use this for bookings, etc. Now, a combination of these cyber physical systems, ultra fast internet connectivity, and artificial intelligence is what's given rise to the fourth industrial revolution. And that's what is driving our world right now. So the fourth industrial revolution is not something new. It's been around. It's been around for the past 5 to 10 years. Our cell phones now are able to understand when we speak. They're able to recognize our faces. They're able to do things that previously cell phones couldn't do. Uber, Airbnb, these are companies that have embraced fourth industrial revolution. There's a lot of places now where they're using special cameras. I mean, I was at GovTech yesterday. It's a major conference that happens in South Africa once a year. I actually spoke at the conference, and they demonstrated the new Durban Metro Police cars, which are built with image recognition capabilities. So these cars are now fitted with 360-degree cameras that have the ability to recognize number plates. So as the police car is driving, if it sees a car that's been stolen, that's been reported stolen, it can immediately recognize that plate and inform the drivers that this is what's the situation with this car. Again, fourth industrial revolution. So fourth industrial revolution is not something that's coming. It's not something scary. It's not like a Terminator scene that computers are going to take over the world. It's plain old technologies that we are used to, but they're being used for more different, more effective ways to improve our lives. So fourth industrial revolution is all about improving human lives rather than coming out with new technologies. So that is the misconception that most people have, that 4IR is something completely new. Now, take a look at this. This is the Tesla Model S. I think I showed you guys this in the previous webinar. This is an example of fourth industrial revolution. Last time I spoke about artificial intelligence. So it's AI, but it's also a cyber physical system. It's a physical being, it's a physical object that's connected to the internet, and it has AI built in. So this is a very good example of the fourth industrial revolution. Now the question arises that what is going to be our role in the fourth industrial revolution, and what are the skills? I showed this to you in the past, this slide, and I'm showing it to you again. In the fourth industrial revolution, our job as human beings is going to be these skills here. We need to have mental elasticity, creativity, we need to have problem solving skills, people skills, critical thinking, and STEM. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and maths. Now, the great part for you guys, for IT Varsity students, is that all of these are built into Entrepreneur, whether you're seeing it directly or indirectly. But we are teaching you new skills, we are teaching you creativity, we're teaching you to solve problems through both the learning as well as through the projects that you are doing. Now, the people that will be at the biggest advantage in the fourth industrial revolution are the masters of technology. So you guys have a very good grounding. You are becoming masters of technology. You are learning technology. And all these cyber physical systems and AI, what's running them? Do you know? It's code. And you guys are becoming coders. So in other words, you're going to be talking directly into the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, that's for you guys, for techies, but what about for everyone else? For most other people, their jobs are going to go to another level. They're going to leave a lot of their current work to computers to do, and then they're going to go to another level. Let's take the medical field, for example. Doctors in the future are not going to be doing diagnostics. They're not going to be doing blood tests, because all this is going to be done by machines. Like, for example, they came up with a scanner that can scan a person's body and tell exactly what disease the person has. It can do a complete diagnostic. So if there's a device that can do that, what's the job of the doctor? The doctor's job is now going to be to transcend that role and to become more of a people person. So the doctor will be the go-between, between the machine and the human being. The doctor will talk to the patient, will counsel the patient about how to take precautionary measures to avoid diseases, or if they already have a disease, how they're going to go about curing that disease. So the doctor will become more of a consultant. In the same way, teachers are going to become more people oriented rather than teaching oriented. In the future classrooms, what's going to happen? Exactly what you guys are doing. What are you guys doing? Do you have a teacher in your class teaching you Entrepreneur? Not at all. That's the future of education. In the future, you're going to learn physically through computers, through videos, and the teacher's role in the class is going to be to support you in your learning and to make sure that whatever challenges you are having, that those challenges are overcome. If you got questions, if you're having difficulties, then the teacher is going to help you resolve those. So our role in the future, in a nutshell, is defined by people skills. We're going to become more oriented towards people, and the machines are going to take over things that are more mundane and that require less interactions with people. Remember, we are human beings, and we're always going to require human beings to interact with us. When you send your child to school, you want that child to be greeted by a human being, not a machine. When you're walking into an aeroplane, you want to be greeted by a human being, a friendly flight attendant who smiles and welcomes you on board. You don't want to be welcomed by a machine. In the same way, pretty much every aspect of our lives, even when you go to a restaurant, I know there's a lot of restaurants now that are using robots as waiters. Personally, when I go to a restaurant, I want to see a smiling waiter. I want to see somebody who I can ask, what are the specials today? What do you recommend, etc., and interact with that person. So there's always going to be that aspect of it, no matter what. Now, that is what the fourth industrial revolution is going to entail. So my advice to you guys are getting everything else. You're getting the STEM, the science, technology, engineering. Well, not so much the maths because we don't focus on that in an entrepreneur. But you also need to focus on your people skills. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up on that slide, and now I'm going to take your questions. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So feel free to fire away. Okay, guys, since there's no questions right now, remember you can always contact us via the forums or